Most people imagine crisis as a moment, a sudden disaster, a shocking event, a short period of chaos, and then, recovery. But the human brain was never designed only for short crises. Some crises last months, some last years, and when uncertainty becomes the background of everyday life, something unusual begins to happen inside the mind. The brain slowly rewrites the rules of normal. Fear becomes routine, adaptation replaces stability, and the definition of survival quietly changes. What begins as emergency can slowly become a way of living. And understanding how the mind adapts to long-term crisis reveals something remarkable about human nature. Because the brain does not simply endure prolonged uncertainty, it transforms. Most people imagine crisis in short timelines, a sudden disruption, a temporary shock, a difficult moment that eventually passes. The mind expects instability to be temporary, a spike in stress, followed by a return to normal life. But long-term crises challenge this expectation. They stretch uncertainty across weeks, then months, sometimes years, and when instability lasts this long, the brain cannot stay in permanent emergency mode. It would burn out. So something more complex begins to happen. The brain adapts, not perfectly, not without cost, but gradually. The mind begins reorganizing how it sees the world, how it measures risk, how it defines safety, how it thinks about the future. At some point, the crisis stops feeling like an interruption and slowly becomes the environment itself. This shift is subtle. Most people don't notice it happening, but it changes how we think, how we plan, how we respond to stress, and most importantly, how the brain defines survival. The human brain evolved to detect danger. When something threatening appears, the nervous system activates an ancient response. Stress hormones rise, attention sharpens, the body prepares for action. This system works extremely well for short dangers, a sudden accident, a brief confrontation, a moment that requires immediate reaction. The brain reacts quickly, and once the danger passes, balance returns. But long-term crisis is different, because the threat never fully disappears. Instead of sharp spikes of stress, the brain experiences something more subtle, persistent uncertainty. And uncertainty is one of the most demanding states for the human mind. The brain constantly tries to predict what will happen next, where safety will be, what risks may appear. Humans are prediction machines. We feel calmer when the future feels predictable, but when the environment becomes unstable, prediction becomes difficult. And when prediction becomes difficult, the brain begins to experience tension, not always panic, but a quiet alertness, a background awareness, a constant scanning of the environment. Psychologists sometimes call this state chronic vigilance. The mind is always listening, always watching, always preparing. Over time, people begin to notice something unusual. They may not feel terrified, but they rarely feel completely relaxed either. The nervous system stays partially activated, a silent readiness. This state can be exhausting, but it is also part of the brain's survival design, because awareness increases the chances of navigating unpredictable environments. Still, the brain cannot remain in permanent alert forever. Eventually, it must adjust, and this is where adaptation begins. One of the most remarkable abilities of the human brain is flexibility. Neuroscientists call this neuroplasticity. The brain is not fixed. It constantly reshapes itself in response to experience. If the environment changes, the brain slowly changes with it. This ability allows humans to survive in radically different conditions. New cultures, extreme climates, technological revolutions, and long periods of instability. At first, crisis feels overwhelming. Everything feels unfamiliar. Routines collapse, expectations break. But after weeks or months, something subtle begins to happen. The brain starts building new patterns. New rhythms appear in daily life. People reorganize their priorities. They simplify decisions. Some habits disappear. Others become automatic. The mind begins focusing only on what truly matters: safety, connection, stability. Psychologists call this process adaptive restructuring. The brain reduces complexity. It filters unnecessary concerns and redirects attention toward survival and balance. Many people living through long-term instability notice something surprising. Life becomes harder, but also simpler. Certain worries fade away. Certain priorities become clear. Small moments gain new meaning. A quiet evening, a stable routine, a moment of connection with another person. Things that once felt ordinary suddenly feel important. The mind slowly adjusts to the environment. The unfamiliar becomes familiar, and the brain learns how to function inside uncertainty. Long-term crises affect people differently. Some individuals feel overwhelmed. Others gradually develop remarkable resilience. Psychologists have spent years studying why. One important factor is psychological flexibility. Flexible minds adapt faster. They are less attached to rigid expectations. When circumstances change, they adjust their thinking more easily. Instead of constantly fighting reality, they learn to move with it. Another powerful factor is meaning. Humans do not endure difficulty through survival instincts alone. We search for purpose, for reasons to continue. When people connect their struggles to something meaningful, family, responsibility, community, growth, the brain processes stress differently. Hardship still exists, but it becomes more bearable. Meaning transforms suffering into something the mind can integrate into life. Research consistently shows that people who maintain a sense of purpose during adversity tend to remain more emotionally stable. They recover faster from stress, and they maintain the ability to imagine a future beyond the crisis. Another crucial factor is connection. Humans evolved as social beings. Isolation intensifies stress, but shared hardship often strengthens relationships. Communities grow closer. People support each other in small ways. A conversation, a gesture of empathy, a moment of understanding. Even brief social connection can calm the nervous system, reminding the brain that it is not facing the world alone. Flexibility, meaning, connection. Together, these elements create psychological resilience. They do not remove difficulty, but they change how the brain experiences it. And sometimes, through prolonged hardship, people discover something unexpected. They are stronger than they once believed. Yet adaptation always has a cost. Living in long-term instability slowly affects emotional and cognitive systems. One common effect is emotional fatigue. The nervous system becomes tired of constant vigilance. Even when people continue functioning, they may feel drained. Energy fluctuates. Patience becomes shorter. Motivation rises and falls. Another effect is cognitive overload. Uncertainty forces the brain to process more information than usual. Decisions require extra effort. Planning becomes harder when the future feels unpredictable. Over time, many people stop thinking far ahead. The brain shortens its time horizon. Instead of planning years into the future, attention shifts to the next week or the next day. This narrowing of focus is a survival adaptation. It reduces mental strain, but it also changes how people relate to time. Another subtle effect is emotional numbing. When stress lasts too long, the brain sometimes protects itself by reducing emotional intensity. People may feel less reactive, less overwhelmed, but sometimes less joyful as well. This emotional flattening helps conserve psychological energy. It allows the nervous system to continue functioning, but it also reminds us that adaptation does not mean comfort. The brain is adjusting in order to survive, not necessarily to thrive. Long-term crises reveal something profound about the human mind. At first, uncertainty feels unbearable. The brain resists it, searches desperately for stability, hopes for the return of normal life. But when instability lasts long enough, the definition of normal begins to change. The brain adapts, new routines appear, new priorities form, new strengths develop. This transformation rarely happens suddenly. It unfolds slowly, quietly, day after day. The mind learns how to function inside conditions it once believed impossible. And this ability to adapt may be one of the most powerful traits humans possess. Because survival is not only about resisting danger, it is about reorganizing life around reality. The human brain is not fragile. It is flexible, complex, and deeply resilient, even in prolonged uncertainty, perhaps especially there. Because when the world becomes unpredictable, the mind does not simply break, it evolves.